Season 2 of Notebook on Cities and Culture is brought to you by Carl Haley and Daniel Murphy. I heard you in another interview recently mention that you came here to Portland as an escape, I suppose, from San Francisco's goofball startup culture. I'd love to hear a little more of your diagnosis of the goofballism of San Francisco, Silicon Valley tech culture.
God, do you want me to distill down the goofiness?
You can be expansive. And distillation, I mean, we've got time.
It just is what it's silly. It's pretty silly down there. Actually moved up here because the real estate was much cheaper. It was an obvious thing. I was just about turning 30 and wife wanted to have a child. So it's like, yeah, it was a lot cheaper to settle down up here and get your life going. Yeah, the longer I'm away from San Francisco, the more ridiculous it is with every passing bit of news that comes out. God, what was the thing just the other day that was freaking me out? Paul Graham's essay. Paul Graham, a tech commentator guy who wrote an essay on why startups are amazing and important, and it was just...
It's got a few of those essays, as I understand it.
Yeah, and it was just ridiculous and over the top, and he funds a zillion businesses through Y Combinator, and he was saying a successful business, a startup, is 5 to 7% growth per week in users and pages, and I was just thinking about how that's just demanding that much out of your ideas. It's just a path to insanity.
That way lies madness.
Yes, yeah. And so ever since I've been up here, I guess I've been towing the line that, maybe you should have a life and have some things on the side that you do and get those things in a proper balance, and you can be happy. And yeah, it's definitely possible here. In San Francisco, you're constantly reminded that it isn't really possible.
It's Notebook on Cities and Culture. I'm Colin Marshall, sitting down here in Portland, Oregon. What neighborhood are we in, by the way? I went too far from the last neighborhood to know where we are.
I don't know what they call this. It's kind of like Northwest Industrial, I guess.
Northwest Industrial. I've heard Slabtown as well?
Yeah, Slabtown.
Okay, Slabtown. Right. We're sitting here in Slabtown. I'm talking to Matt Haughey, who 13 years ago began, I would say, one of the most respected and civilized internet communities you can find, MetaFilter. He's done a bunch of other internet projects as well. It continues to. If you're a big driver, maybe you use Fuely. And I could rattle off the names of them for a while, but I think what's important to emphasize is that whether for MetaFilter or for anything else, you haven't been adhering to that 7% growth a week demand. You've kept yourself from going nuts, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, with MetaFilter, I mean, the thing is, I've been asked to give talks a lot on how I've run this successful project for so long, and now it's actually even, financially does pretty well. And then for the first 6 years, it made no money. It cost money. It cost all my time. So that's not in a business school textbook. Start something that will starve you for 6 months, and then it'll get better after that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. What was the question?
Well, I want to expand on that a little bit. It's something that I said. So MetaFilter I called one of the more civilized internet communities there is, and I think of it that way. People seem to regard it that way. What does it mean to you when I say something like it's civilized?
Well, yeah, we put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that people are nice to each other and staying on topic. Yeah, I guess the world of weblog comments is notorious for just being like a blood sport sort of cutthroat world. I think there's popular communities like Reddit and other communities where, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's mostly good. And then there's a few people fighting it out. And we still have that on MetaFilter, but I mean, we have four full-time moderators, staring at the site all the time. We're weeding things out by hand. We have a pretty, since the community's so old, we have a pretty good community culture, and people know what to expect and know what's out of line for the community and report stuff to us. We have a whole bunch of tools for that. So we keep pretty close watch on the community 24 hours a day now, since we have someone in Europe and we're hiring another person in Europe. handle the overnights.
Well, what are the things that are on your guys' radar as far as this really can go wrong in a community like this, and we specifically want to prevent this from going wrong? Like, when emblematic of what kills forums generally, what do you want to nip in the bud, as they say, first?
The first, there's so many levels here. So the first would be like the very first comment will set the tone for the rest of the thread. And a lot of people want to make a quick, snarky joke. So we will knock those out often. You'll never see first post, that ridiculous stuff. But even beyond that, people will just, anything having to do with politics or any hot button issue whatsoever, someone will want to make a joke to lighten the mood. And that'll just be people arguing about the joke. So we'll have to get rid of that. For the most part, it's like hot button issues. Lately, the things that are constantly coming up are trying to think how to... like the presidential race every 4 years is just intolerable.
Never a good time to be a MetaFilter moderator when a presidential election is coming up.
I cannot believe there's only been 1, 2, 3... I guess it'll be our 4th presidential election. It just feels like the 6 months leading up to it takes 2 years to go by. So we're trying to just knock out anything about the election, unless it's something major is usually what we say, because there's always 1 or 2 things a week that stick around. And people just want to battle in those. So, yeah, I mean, we're not trying to make a safe place for people to yell past each other, but that's what those end up being in the
a safe place for people to yell past each other. Someone's got to start that, though.
A Nerf world. And lately, I mean, everything having to do with, I mean, there is sort of a Republican war on women, so like women specific issues are just a huge thing, and it's like every week there's some fighty thread, and then there's this weird trend lately of like reverse racism and what men's rights garbage stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of, but always the mostly white men who have enjoyed privilege for decades to centuries suddenly being asked to rethink that, and then thinking the whole world's unfair suddenly. It's ridiculous. So that just puts people in a fighting mood, and those are things we have to...
You're looking for fighting words.
We have to stamp that out. And lots of that is like removing things that are just obviously inflammatory or attacking other users, and then leaving moderator notes. We'll do that in a thread where we go, guys, remember this thread was about this one story. Let's try and stick to that instead of going through each other's educational history about how they have no right to say what they can say.
You mentioned Paul Graham and his essays, and he writes essays about tech culture and startups, but also other things as well. One of them, which seemed to be very much internet informed, was an essay he had called, I think, "Keep Your Identity Small," and it was about how he starts with the premise that you can't really have a useful discussion about politics and religion, but he thinks that's because those subjects engage people's identities, and you can't really talk about anything smartly that is so much to do with people's identities. You're never going to see a good Ford versus Chevy thread on the internet, right? I mean, does that resonate with you in your years moderating MetaFilter, that identity is just, you'd maybe rather not see that just involved at all in these discussions? Like, you just want to say, look, if you're going to have an identity-based discussion, take it to Reddit.
I've never thought of it that way, but there's a lot of truth to that. Like, I think of hot button issues and people's personal issues. The closer they are to it, the harder it is going to be discussed. And a lot of these hot button issues, we talk about how, like, when there are 4 of us in a college dorm, we could have talked all night about some really ridiculous, like trying to defend pedophilia or something. Right. And the 4 people could do that and have a high-level discussion, but 4,000 on the internet, it's never, ever going to work.
Right.
And so, yeah. I never thought about it being how much of your identity is wrapped up in it, but that's a good point.
He says, you can talk about a battle in the Middle Ages just fine with anybody because you wouldn't know which side to be on, not necessarily. But I guess there's a flip side to that. People don't always want to talk about battles in the Middle Ages. A few do. There's that other bit where if it doesn't engage the identity, if it engages too little, you're gonna have a big 1 or 2 with a comment count underneath.
And I guess when you think about Ask MetaFilter, there's a whole bunch of battles people aren't super invested in. You know, like, should I dump this boyfriend?
Yes.
Should I ask this girl out? Or, you know, what are the other common questions? Like, what should I do with my life?
Yeah, what should I do with my life is a big one. I mean, I should mention to the listener who hasn't been there, Ask MetaFilter is a separate page on MetaFilter. You know, MetaFilter itself is the community weblog. People post interesting things, essentially. Ask MetaFilter, they post questions, and I've used that as well. Now, first, let's clear it up. Ask MetaFilter seems to be, traffic-wise, more popular than MetaFilter. Is that true? Or what position does it play in terms of the structure, the operations, the generated busyness of MetaFilter?
Yeah, it's a really strange backend in the way that Craigslist revealed that newspapers ran on classified ads, and we did not know that as outsiders. We thought it was all investigative reporting somehow paid for the news.
Sure, it was the Baghdad Bureau.
Right. Yeah, right. That's floated the whole New York Times. So MetaFilter is the same way. Everyone thinks of www.metafilter.com. It's like a weblog about anything on the web that's interesting and people discussing that. That's always been the front and center representation of the site. Ask MetaFilter was just, there's a bunch of smart people who are talking about all this stuff. I might want to ask them questions. Eventually, through the mysteries of Google, 90% of the traffic is now on Ask MetaFilter for outsiders, like non-members. If you look at members, it's about 50-50. Half are just on Ask MetaFilter, half are on MetaFilter, or everything together. But in terms of economics and the weird way the backend works, like 90% of everything is coming from Ask MetaFilter, like income and traffic and yeah.
And I should emphasize, as a user of MetaFilter, Ask MetaFilter is generally really cool, really useful. Yeah. Like if I have a question about anything, somebody's going to answer that question. Maybe they're going to be a little vague sometimes if it's obscure, but somebody will answer. I've asked stuff like, how do I move into an apartment in Los Angeles without a provable income, which I did. Not going to be the last time I do that, by the way. Or I am also the author of, I'll take credit for this one, the second most popular Ask MetaFilter thread of all time, which is, what in life did it take you a long time to realize you'd always been doing wrong? Now, many of the comments were about that they didn't realize how to pronounce awry, but those are only a few hundred of them. There's more, and it became a fascinating thread, I think, for a lot of people to read. But besides the own horn tooting, I will say that thread, I guess, had a huge controversy about whether it was going to survive. Like that, the mods, I don't know if you were one, but one or two of them were like, well, I would have deleted that had I not been in a movie, because it was too. I don't know what is that thread too much of to be allowed to live sometimes.
Yeah. What's the exact title? What was it?
It is what in life did it take you a long time to realize you'd been doing wrong all along, I guess.
Yep. Wow.
Number 2, 933 answers, 1,068 favorites.
I remember doing the book one. I wonder if I ever said anything in this. It doesn't look familiar to me.
This is a thread, listeners, by the way, from, is there a date on here? July 6, 2010. So 2 years ago.
Oh, no, I deleted something.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, you can see on your interface, you can see what you've deleted. And how much of that do you have to do in a thread like this?
Not a ton. So this tells me how many things have been flagged, how many things to worry about. Oh, wow, yeah, 14 people did not like your question.
Wow, and what is controversial? Just with the principles of MetaFilter, what does this go against?
A chat filter is what there's a perfect way to sum it up. I see this in lots of Q&A sites that's just mindless chatter, basically. Like what if questions, or what if there was no gravity and would I be better at basketball? Or what if Hitler never existed? Would this have happened? Things where you're just like, well, let's just try and concentrate on real problems that can actually help someone. So a lot of times, we've tried to come up with some guidelines to cut down on the mindless chatter, which I see all over Yahoo Answers and Quora and even Google Answers.
Yahoo Answers is probably what you hold up and say, let's just not be that.
Yeah,
let's just not be that.
Yeah, that's kind of the YouTube comments of question and answer sites. So, we don't want the questions to be too open-ended. We want to somehow help someone We don't want every answer to be equally usable. Right. And we hate the "I'll go first," which is like, "Hey, I was thinking about this thing. What about movies like this? And I'm thinking of this movie." And then, a lot of these are borderline. A lot of these life advice things are super popular, but also kind of on the borderline.
This might say something about MetaFilter as well. It's a fascinating thing. During the brief time I had a day job, I did spend a lot of time on MetaFilter. I was never working, so I was looking on MetaFilter, and I briefly got into, maybe you would call this a grim fascination or something, but I would go into MetaFilter's archives, Ask MetaFilter, specifically the Ask, and I would look for a very prevalent type of question, which boils down to, like, how do I make friends? How do I talk to people? How do I interact with a human being? Like, I've never had sex. It's like, what is up with all that? Why are there seem to be so many of those? And I guess you can say it's the internet. People who are, even if you don't have social skills, you can ask how to get them on the internet. But what's going on with, that's like a perpetual thing. There's always a popular thread like, I don't know how to talk to a girl, or I don't know how to talk to a guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would call that the Forever Alone series of problems.
Users, Google image foreveralone.jpg and you'll see a very appropriate picture.
Yeah. Didn't they boil down Reddit to like two most popular things were Forever Alone and what was the other meme? It was something joyful, like, and the other one was Forever Alone, which isn't really joyful. Yeah. And it was complete polar opposites. The internet for an introvert is like the greatest communication medium because you don't have to do anything that's awkward or makes you feel awkward, and you can take your time and say what you want. So I think, advice sites are going to be inundated with people that have a hard time communicating with other humans.
Yeah, so do you think their problems get solved on these threads? I do wonder about that because it's like the advice seems sound to me. It's like, some people are they're saying helpful things, these users. I just don't know. Do you know if it sticks?
We do, like, from time to time we hear really good follow-ups.
I talked to a girl the other day.
Yes. We email people 1 month after they write a question going, oh, hey, did you ever solve your problem? If so, mark it as resolved, and we sort of a feed of resolved problems. And there are like, should I introduce myself to this person? Questions that ended up with a marriage like a year later or 2 years later. So I think, most of the advice is, since people have no emotional attachment to this stranger on the internet, they can just pretty much say, look, you need to get out of your comfort zone, do these things, and things will get better. And so
sometimes the questioner says, oh, forget it then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes we'll see the same user ask the same question once a week for 2 months, and then we'll be like, you've gotten 7 threads full of great advice. You need to, and it almost always comes down to get out of your comfort zone, try something new, try harder.
I remember you on good life advice in general. Now that I think of it, try harder, get out of your comfort zone. I'll put that in my notepad for later. But I remember hearing in another interview you said that you and the other mods you could name the 10 worst users if you had to. I'm not going to say name the 10 worst users. What makes a 10 worst user?
Well, just being memorable to us is a bad thing. Like, so there's 60,000.
If we know who you are, you're already doing wrong.
Right. So just imagine you're watching over a community of 60,000 people. Imagine you're a small town cop or something. Yeah. If you constantly run into the same 8 or 10 names constantly, every 2 days, you're not going to forget them, and you're going to be like, why do I remember 8 people's names out of 60,000?
Yeah, there's old Dwight again.
Yeah,
he's
right.
Drunk again.
Right, and that's basically what they end up being, the town drunks. Drunk on power or stupidity. Just sometimes they're just goofing with people, sometimes they're just completely clueless.
Right.
So, yeah. They have to be annoying and off topic and fighty with other people and all over the place all the time, and like that's usually how you get on our radar.
I think of, whenever I want to post something that's neat to the internet, I think of putting it to MetaFilter because more than anywhere else it will give the intelligent comments and response, and in some quantity intelligent comments I will learn something from the discussion that goes on. Can't say that about almost any other site. But then I know that, where you would get a dumb comment on YouTube is just like, oh, I can dismiss that. They can barely read. An undesirable comment, I should say, is like that on YouTube. On MetaFilter, an undesirable comment is like actually sort of a painful experience. Like it's this sort of hyperarticulate sourness that just gets you. It's like, oh, like what? Oh, I had a conversation, listeners, you can go to the interview with Jesse Thorne and Adam Lissagore, who created Put This On, the men's fashion web series. That made it to MetaFilter when it debuted, and we talked about this in our interview a couple of years back, a year or two back, and I think Adam was saying, yeah, people on MetaFilter, they're great, but some of them just get so worked up about strange things, and you can't understand, but they're saying a lot. I mean, it's a species of undesirable commenter that is still fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just I don't like that. It's you're wrong, you're bad, you should feel bad. Like,
right.
Yeah.
For many reasons listed out as well.
Yeah, and it goes way too, I mean, the site has always been slightly snarky. I don't think it came... I tend to say that community leaders sort of reflect their own communities. I think maybe I had a snarky attitude when I was much younger. I was kind of snarky, and I guess that sort of paved the way. But yeah, I'm not super happy when I see or I'll notice myself writing a defense of anything, and as soon as I start writing and I notice them bolstering every sentence with defensive words at all sides, knowing that someone could come in and
armor plating
my sentences, because I know someone will come in on one tiny little topic and go, that's wrong, or that's bad, or that'll lead to global warming, how could you?
Right.
And you're like, no, my larger point is correct, though. Just ignore that one tiny detail.
I feel like at some point in life I personally gave up. The idea of being right really appealed to me 10 years ago or so. The idea of being right no longer appeals to me in any way at all, but some people, that never stops being the most important thing, that they are right. It's like, at least I'm right about something.
Right, and I never understood the whole getting the last word in, what that even meant.
Sure.
As a kid, as a teen, even my 20s, I was like, I don't even, until on the internet.
Yes.
Being on the internet and arguing till you're blue in the face with someone, and someone's still coming back for more, and I realized, oh, that's what people meant by having to get the last word in.
I guess there's that XKCD comic that people send around a lot, where the character is his girlfriend saying come to bed, but he's hunched over the computer saying I can't. Somebody is wrong on the internet. Do you think, I mean, is that just a human thing, or are we in an age when the internet is still so new to us, we're new to it, that this is kind of a novelty? We can argue all day long, and we can get that charge like it's a drug. I mean, are we kind of the canaries in the coal mine in that sense? Like, later generations will not do that. They won't be pressing the button of the basic stimulation of getting into an argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the internet's just replacing other avenues we used to do this in. Like, maybe you argue at work with your coworkers, sure. Or people used to go to bars on television shows of 50 years ago. Half the show is always in a bar. Right. Like, I walked by a bar the other day that was packed at 3 p.m. and I was like, I can't identify with that. Like,
it's Portland. They were enjoying microbrews. I don't know if you drink or not, but microbrews.
Yeah, but I would do that at 6 p.m., 7 p.m.
Sure. The hour was a little weird.
Yeah, 3 o'clock, packed. People shooting pool at 3 o'clock. The sun shouldn't be up when you're shooting pool. So yeah, I think the internet just provides a new avenue for something that's always been there. So I think it's a human nature, unfortunately, and I think it'll be here forever.
Now, someone doing tech projects like a MetaFilter or a Fuely or anything you've done, people would expect you to be living in San Francisco, where you have lived, or somewhere in the Bay Area. But you're here in Portland, as we've discussed, and you're away from the goofball startup culture. But tell me a little bit about the tech world that there is in Portland and existing within that. Do you see yourself as existing within a Portland tech world? Or are you kind of like, are you sort of a Bedouin here doing a tech thing in the world of Portland?
Yeah, I think the latter. Yeah, I just feel like, the San Francisco stuff is crazy just because it's such a go-go attitude. It's exciting as hell. If you work for any of the companies in New York or San Francisco, like, super fun because every day is an adventure. But it just gets to be old after a couple of years.
Right.
It's like watching a reality show where some talented people have to do something and they always have 20 minutes to finish, like every week you're like, really? Couldn't they just give themselves another day? Like, like the insane deadline show, which is pretty much all of them. And that's essentially what it felt like to be in San Francisco and New York.
Just like, it's like, am I doing this for an audience? Why is there this? Why is it like this?
Yeah, and there's funders, and you're always on display for people to give you money or take money.
VC frowning at you from across the table at some Sand Hill Road cafe. I mean, it sounds miserable.
Yeah, it gets old. And like with Fuely, that was a driving app, and a friend in New York said you could only program that in the suburbs. Like, nobody has a car in San Francisco or New York that I know, and like nobody cares about their fuel economy or has time to. So it's very much like the help to be out here in the sticks.
The sticks. You mean where the city you live in outside of Portland, or do you consider Portland to be sort of a greater branch of the
outside.
sticks?
Yeah, I'm like 30 miles away from here, so yeah, I'm really kind of in the sticks. And, there's lots of driving. But, no, it's relaxing. Everyone here, they aren't defined by their jobs up here as much like you are in San Francisco. I mean, everyone's been to obnoxious parties when they're in Go-Go City, and everyone's sort of,
I'm really into gamification.
And I really want to move into, some other, or I'm at Facebook until my stock vests, and then I'm going to strike out on my own with an iOS startup.
Right, got an idea for an SEO company. Hey, I don't think anyone says that.
No. But, up here, people are, whatever, making artisanal frisbees or something.
Sure,
and they homebrew beer. And then on the side, they program some popular website just to make ends meet.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I like the lifestyle up here a lot better. It's more human scale, and
I wonder, something I wanted to ask you about, because I remember hearing you saying, well, you're a guy who likes, I don't know if you said a quiet life or a simple life or something
simplicity.
On that order, simplicity, yeah.
Simplicity.
And I wonder, what does Portland afford you in terms of achieving the simple life that is also cool, and where you can work on cool stuff and enjoy cool artisanal frisbees or coffees or beers or whatever. Like, what about Portland? Does anything about Portland make like the simple life a more appealing life and not whittling based?
I think any place that's not San Francisco, Los Angeles, or New York City is probably going to take you pretty far towards a simpler life. Like the first house my wife and I bought here, God, I don't know what you could get in California. I mean, it was like we spent it on rent in 2 years. Like the total cost of the house was 2 years of rent in San Francisco. So, it's just, it's way easier when you don't have to worry about the high cost of everything. And so you can slow down, you can be more careful with your decisions, you can set up your life the way you want to because you're not on the rat race.
Right.
I mean, it's not free to live here. No. You can't pay for a sandwich with a song, but...
not everywhere here.
No, they take cards. I mean, it's a lot simpler than New York City. I mean, the friends I know in New York City, that's it reminds me of the publisher parish academic world I came from. I was in the UC campus, I was at UCLA, and I was at UC Riverside, and my professors were just... I mean, they had terrible marriages. They had children who didn't know them or hated them. And they just worked 16 hours a day and were hoping not to get fired or demoted. Like, it was crazy.
Right. It seems like a simple goal, if my marriage can be non-terrible and my kids cannot hate me, but in many an industry, too much to ask, it seems like.
Yeah, my wife is a professor, and she was like, I do not want to be in the University of California campus. Those are crazy factories of I mean, some of the best science work comes out of them. At the same time, a lot of broken marriages, and so we specifically just looked anywhere in the Western U.S. for a professor job for her, because I could work from anywhere. So that's how we ended up out here. And it was like, I want to have a life. These people all seem to have lives outside of work. Yeah, that was something super appealing.
I want to know a little more about your seeming immunity toward the sort of cash-in, grow as rapidly as possible startup culture. I mean, because you've been in tech for a long time, and maybe that's part of it, is getting started in the early 90s and having an interest in, I guess, like an intellectual interest in the way a project like MetaFilter works. I mean, was it the earliness? Was it the fact that you approached from a different angle? Or was it the fact that your projects are things like MetaFilter? I mean, what keeps you immune from the sort of the I don't know about craze, but the fever that seems to overcome people and then turns them all in one direction in web tech, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think part of it is like I came from the academic world and I came from, the college internet world, and I was working in academics. So,
This is in the days when Washington University had most of the stuff on the internet, right? You were usually going to them, as I recall.
Or what? No, it was Urbana-Champaign.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It was there. It was Urbana-Champaign or Washington University. They seem to have the internet, both in between them.
Yeah, they invented Mosaic, so that was the homepage of the computer lab. Lucky for me, I don't think I've had any amazing idea that was so hot that the wider internet wanted it as soon as possible. I think I've always had, MetaFilter's a hard thing to sell to anyone. And I've had interest from a couple, Google and Yahoo people and Facebook calling me up. And then when I break down, it's this human-powered thing with 60,000 people sometimes arguing. They don't really want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They really just want to buy like a Python script off you that automates everything. Like, oh, you're a one-man empire, right? You're a programmer. Can we just buy that? And there's really no amazing tech. It's all human done.
Right. But that $5 cover charge helps a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does cut down on it. Or people are really committed to being bad because they paid $5 for it.
Sure, you get the ones committed to being good, and then you get the ones very committed to being trolls.
Right, yeah. And give me a refund if I'm not allowed to troll. No, but I think I don't know. I think I was, I came into the internet at the birth of blogging, and there was no money in it at all. Someone just pointed out a comment I made on MetaFilter 10 years ago talking about how someday there'd be like a commercial blogging world, and I was writing out all the problems I foresaw, and it was pretty much everything that's happened.
Oh, sure.
I think it was when Nick Denton first came out, like, he was going to start Gawker, and he was going to try and make money blogging, and people thought that was absurd. And then we, talked about that. But
so you foresaw the corrupting business models to arise?
Yeah, I was talking specifically about, like, writing articles for page views, things that are just completely, there's a whole world, BuzzFeed is pretty much built around that. Yeah, and Huffington Post, everything,
It seems we're in a bit of a freakish time for that because I guess you could call them the content business models, as much as I don't really like that term. No one does, I suppose. But they tend to revolve. Yeah, the page view model has been the most successful and the least good for content, it seems like. And you can spot it. You can spot it a mile away when an article is 15 great reasons why. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, every well, my favorite, as in my most emblematic of what's wrong with things is, it's like, hey, here's 15 movies by directors you wouldn't expect to have made them, or what have you. Pretty reasonable, not very highbrow, but reasonably so for this kind of thing. You click on it, and then you see those numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, the links. They're each, it's 15 pages. You're going to click through with comments. Well, that reloads each time. And I hope that model can't last very long. We're realizing this is not a way to go, right? People are not going to the 15 smallest bikinis or what have you so much anymore, right?
Yeah, not really. And I think we're also getting that business model is getting Craigslisted out of favor with mobile devices. Is something I just argued at the XOXO conference I was at. That basically ad revenue, so content-based sites are doing this, just for ad views, and ad views on mobile are terrible, like magnitudes worse in all regards. The number of times people click. I use a phone to read the internet half the time, and I don't click anything because I don't want to get out of the tiny viewport I'm in.
Yeah, right.
And now it's like MetaFilter is at like 22% on a 3.5 inch screen.
Right.
And like as a big content site with some ads on it, like that's like I've basically seen traffic be level or growing, but revenue dropping. And I imagine people at like large content like someone Condé Nast or something that's been in a business for a century. Basically, you write content, you put it out there, and reap the rewards. Like mobile browsing is going to be a really big shock to their system.
Right.
And it's really ramping. It's like hockey sticking right now. So I showed a graph of, I think, 2009, I think we had 2% mobile use. Next year we had 12. And you're like, oh, okay, that's about right. Next year, 25. And we're like, wow. And now it's 30 to 35% mobile traffic. And it's kind of astounding how quickly People are predicting 50% by next year or the year after. So, like, there are some sites, that are already, like, over 50% use by mobile, like anything remotely, mobile that's helpful to have when you're out and about. And so, like, making those sites work, it's going to be hard. So I think this will naturally get rid of some of the ridiculous.
I remember you talking about, remarking on the strangeness of Google being kind of an unacknowledged ad company. There's this small chunk that's 100% of the revenue, seemingly. Yeah. And it's one of these qualities of the internet that's made me slightly uncomfortable, is that all my favorite things that have been around a while, or the things I use the most often, tend to be ad-supported. But I can say, honestly, that if I've clicked on an ad ever on the internet, I don't recall it. And I can't be the only one who's never clicked on an ad. I wonder who's doing all the clicking. I'm glad they are, I guess, if it's supporting things I like, but it just feels a little weird that I can't be the only one.
I don't know. I don't think of myself as abnormal, and I click on a handful of ads every week.
Oh, okay.
Usually,
maybe we're safe.
Yeah, it depends on how well targeted they are. If you have the brains of Google, and it's going to be related to what you're searching, that works. Or, like, you think of the deck ads, which are, like, highly curated, like, artsy things, and, they're only on, like, Kotkey and Daring Fireball, and they're on the front page of MetaFilter, and it's like, I click a couple of those a week because it's like, whoa, new field notes guide or something, where I'm like, I didn't know that was out. That's actually useful.
They are well-made ads.
Yeah.
I've never clicked them still, but maybe I will. Just solidarity, I guess.
Don't fear the click. It's totally fine. Yeah. I ran a TiVo blog because I hated, advertising so much. But I'm okay with, like, stuff that actually works. I mean, people hate ads on TV because they're completely scattershot. Yeah. You watch Jeopardy and it's all, like, these weird like
adult diapers mostly. It's 90%.
Fiber-based ads. But, I mean, imagine if, the internet's more like TV about... And it's getting creepy, right? Like, what was I just searching for today? And, like, every ad, Google AdSense was basically picking up my search history of the last hour. I was constantly being bombarded with the site I was on 2 hours ago, like their offers. And I was like, it's the worst when I've been shopping for an airline flight or something. It's like, sure. And I bought the ticket. Like, I'm going to Hawaii, and I have to look at Hawaiian Airlines.
You want to go again?
Yeah, like for 2 weeks I have to look at Hawaiian Airlines ads. I'm done. I got one already.
Most unsettling are the ones that seem to have pulled text from an email.
Oh yeah, those are the ones in Gmail. That's weird too. But I'm okay with it. I mean, it is sad that so much stuff is ad supported. I wish we had more of a variety of business models. Everything is either ad supported or merchandise. T-shirts go a long way in the comics and band world, and then you have people like Jesse Thorne, doing donation drives and stuff, and that's not an easy road to hoe. So. It's like, I wish there were more options. I guess Kickstarters, you know.
Certainly what I use. That's why you're hearing this show right now, listeners, is Kickstarter. Without that, I guess I'd be doing more the Jesse thing, but I'm glad I didn't have to set up the infrastructure he does. But he has a lot more money than I do, so there's that as well.
Yeah, Jesse sort of does the thing, then he asks for money to pay for the thing he already did. But, I mean, he's used Kickstarter put this on twice now. But, yeah, it's helpful. But, yeah, it is sad that advertising still makes the world go around, the internet world. And like what I said about Google, it's like if you physically go to the Google campus, you'll be astounded. Like I've met the AdSense team, and they've showed me the AdWords team, and these are the two branches that basically handle, like, all the money going into Google is coming through those guys. And I think AdSense was 35 people, and AdWords was maybe 150 people. And this is out of a company of, 20,000? And we're talking, like, billions of dollars are all funneling through those ads. And then when you walk around campus and go get your free lunch from the chef, like everyone there, nobody gives the ad people any respect. The Google Maps JavaScript team is, the cool kids table at the restaurant there. And it's like, really, Google's an ad company that does a little bit of email and mapping on the side when you look at their financials. But like, it's ridiculous that, like, 200 people out of 20,000 basically bring in all the cash.
I would imagine those 200 are fairly generously compensated.
I don't know. I know a couple. They didn't seem
too happy.
No, they didn't seem super stoked. I just can't believe how lean they run. They run that company extremely leanly, but like so few of their ideas make money. It's pretty much the advertising part brings like well over 90% of their money. And it's a weird, just like Craigslist and newspapers. Weird when you see the actual way businesses work.
Right. It strips off the outer layers, and there's a sense in which everybody in the world is a lot more familiar with what business models are, what the business models are of the things that they use every day, are they not? And given the way the internet sort of lays that bare.
Well, you think you do, and then you realize, I don't know. I think we're more wed to businesses from half a century ago, where you make an object and then you sell the object, and that's how you make money, right? And then
our models are always like furniture craftsmen. Everybody is that in some sense.
It goes back a few centuries.
Right, we're all thinking of Coopers. We all need barrels. And I wonder, thinking about a project like MetaFilter or this very show, ones that ran for free for a while, and the trickle started coming in, and now roll along. MetaFilter, obviously, in a much grander way than this show. But it seems like not only is it revealed to me that there is a room for these sort of eccentric, you might say, projects on the net. That might be the main thing that there's a room for. The super large-scale stuff is what seems to hit the skids. If somebody goes in saying, this is going to be getting millions in revenue really quick, that tends to plow into the side of a rock in short order. How does it seem to you?
Friendster.
Friendster. I mean, I don't know what exactly went wrong with Friendster besides Facebook.
It did, though. What did it... There's so many, there's a lot of bodies behind all the popular things on the internet today. But we were talking about this at the conference I was just at about I was saying that internet businesses typically follow if you looked at a silhouette photo of Mount Fuji, it's just sort of a pretty quick up and a pretty quick down. Right. And that the things I've run, some of those have followed that. But MetaFilter is more of the long mound is what we were jokingly calling it.
But you barely even know you're going up when you're walking up it. You didn't know you were going up when you were walking up it.
You can never tell when you're going down, unfortunately. So, I think more personal pet projects or human scale things that you're doing that aren't humongous ideas that are going to basically have a chance of being around forever or sticking around. The big splashy things, they fly too close to the sun. And then...
I guess I'm making a sort of Chris Anderson long tail type argument, am I not? This is well trod ground, but it seems like the end of the, maybe not the end of the tail, but go farther down the tail. Personally, I think maybe this is not true for everybody. We go to San Francisco, where I just came from. It's not true there, but for you or for me, better to be down that tail where you can have a decent life, perhaps with not the chance of large immediate return, but. I don't need that much. I have whiskey in my hand and my girl by my side. I'm fine. And I'm working on something good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I remember getting interviewed when I started the PVR blog right when Google's AdSense came out. And I was making a few thousand a month, on this little blog, and it was amazing. And then when people wanted to interview me, I was like, this doesn't need to be everyone can be Britney Spears kind of story.
Real rags to riches.
Right. Or let's not talk to two people that somehow became millionaires from a new technology. Why don't we talk about the thousands of people who are thousandaires now? That's pretty cool that tens or hundreds of thousands of people can make, $1,000 here and there. That's way more cool to me.
I'm happy to be a thousandaire if it means I don't have to do a lot of this nonsense that people have to do, right? I mean, tell me this, but when people might not know, I mean, you had that TiVo blog, TiVo hacks and whatnot, and TiVo, lots of information that TiVo users could find very useful. Google hit with the ad stuff, and then the money started coming in. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point. Did it seem like, well, hey, I could retire on this thing at this rate? Or what was that like, where it's like, shit?
Oh, it wasn't insane. Yeah. I mean, the most I ever made was $4 or $5 grand at its height a month, which was a decent salary. And I was only making a post a day. It was kind of wow, what kind of weird magic did I stumble onto?
Right. But for that reason, was it well, this is going to not last forever, so I'm just going to ride this thing and,
Well, I didn't, run it into the ground. It just sort of atrophied for years. But, yeah, I was kind of amazed with it. Stupidly enough, I told everyone in the world about it, like how amazing it was. And there were like 6 or 7 copycat blogs within 6 months, like all on the exact same subject, including some from like a really big Weblogs Inc. Company now owned by AOL that came after me. Like specifically, they were going to name it the exact same name except for 2 different characters at the end. They were, when I said that didn't seem ethical, they said, well, it's not against copyright, like you didn't copyright your name, or I mean trademark.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed magic at first. There wasn't much written about, there were like tips and tricks, and I was like hacking in hard drives in my TiVo and stuff, and there wasn't really anything out there. And at some point, yeah, it was like I was the sole source of information for anything related to TiVo, which is just luck, mostly dumb luck. And I was just interested in this thing as a hobbyist, and it was fun to write. So yeah, it all worked out great for a few years. And it was actually making way more money than MetaFilter for the longest time, and helped me sort of quit my day job. But, I knew it wasn't going to last, and sort of like let it sort of atrophy and worked on other things.
It does seem like so many on the net are looking for the easily replicable, simply described idea, but that's the one that's going to get watered down and get its lunch eaten so quickly. Like it's hard to describe the idea of MetaFilter, like just to describe what it is. I'm sure you've encountered it, let alone to replicate it. And it's like, well, okay, 13 years, and you're going to have to do it for free for a while and moderate it all day long, every day.
It can be about anything. It's hard to even define.
$5 cover charge, hard to sign up for. Green, I guess, or blue, depending on which one you're on. But it seems like there's a sense. Tell me what you think of this. Is if you're going to make something cool, whether on the net or otherwise, it's going to be, if it's going to be sustained, it's something that is hard to describe and impossible probably to replicate. It'll have too much freakish coincidence, too much time, too much eccentricity built into it to really. I mean, a blog about TiVo. Anybody can write a blog about TiVo. You'll notice people aren't really doing that anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's still hard to describe MetaFilter this day. Yeah, I mean, especially for communities, the more obscure or confusing they are, it starts to feel like a game. I think Stuart Butterfield pointed this out early on. He co-founded Flickr and stuff and he built game companies before it, and now is building a game company. That the largest communities on the internet are basically games, and there's ways to level up without there being gamification as part of it. He would say, making a good post or getting favorites is like a badge, that you mentally have, and there's lots of hidden parts of Flickr that you run into these weird, wonderful things it takes 6 months to find, kind of, and there's loads of features like that on all our favorite things on the web.
Is anything about MetaFilter game-like? I mean, I picture the moderators can treat it as a game, sniping off the worst of them. That's like playing. I'm trying to think of like a classic arcade game where bad things go on a lot, and you have to like shoot the things that you know what I mean. That model of Robotron, where things just get a lot worse if you don't shoot them. So I can see the gamification on your guys' end, but for the rest of us, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just like a useful thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't accentuate like the favorites, the numbering. The thing that MetaFilter has taught me that people really focus on numbers in any form that you never intended numbers to be at.
You make a post about how do I talk to a girl, then you go look at your numbers.
Yeah, and then we didn't realize like that usernames have a number associated with them just because I programmed this so long ago.
Right.
And like, Fewly does not have numbers next to names. Like, So people would argue, well, you're a user 150,000 and I'm user 2,000. So therefore my opinion is worth more. So we tried, and then there are favorites and they're very contentious on the site. We wanted some way for people to remember things or vote up things, but not, we don't want people to obsess over them, but people have. So.
Right.
Yeah, these are, I mean, no matter how hard you try, people invent ways to gamify pretty much anything.
Audience gamification.
Yeah, and if there's numbers anywhere, of course, Facebook likes, pins, everything you can imagine, Twitter followers. I mean, right. Twitter's trying to get rid of follower counts, which is fascinating if they ever do that, because people are so obsessed with how many followers they have. It's just, it's the
influencers. What can I say?
Vague influence of numbers, that we never thought would be a thing, turned out to be a thing.
Given that you yourself don't have to watch MetaFilter all the time now, I mean, there's other mods as well. Tell me, when you're doing so many internet projects, you live in a city where it's pretty easy to get away from the internet, right? You can have a lot of fun and not be in any sense on the internet. I know you're a cyclist as well. I mean, tell me a little bit about your ways to shut yourself off from the net. You must have them.
Yeah. And definitely not being in San Francisco helps. But I mean, being on a bicycle.
San Francisco is technically the internet itself.
Yeah, pretty much. Being on a bicycle for an hour or two, is the best way for me to unplug for a while. Although I still have an iPhone, usually playing music because I'm riding on these quiet, dead farm roads most of the time. So it's safe, because I know internet commenters will want to say how unsafe that is.
Right. I'll be piling on you.
But and
better hope this never makes the blue.
Having a family and stuff, those are all ways to remind you to unplug every so often. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy for me to not do the internet as long as I used to. I mean, it used to be from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, and several times in the night, watching MetaFilter. And now it's not so bad.
Had to be fun with both MetaFilter and a newborn, right?
Yeah. That was right when I quit my job, and I brought on a moderator pretty quickly after that, and that made things a lot easier. But we used to not. I don't know. The community was smaller, wasn't as contentious as issues. It seems like we really have to stay on top of it all the time now.
Right. It seems like Portland this is one of the more analog stuff oriented cities you could be in if you're looking for an escape from the net. I mean, artisanal frisbees we've mentioned, microbrews, and everything like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this is one of the major cities in America where if you want to have fun that is not internet related, there's the most of it here.
Yeah, and it rains for about half the year, sure. So there's a lot of indoor things you have to do to get away from that. But there's beer, there's food, there's coffee is a huge deal here. There's record shops, there's bookstores. Everything old is new again here. There's tons of stuff to do here. I think a cheaper cost of living definitely helps. Lets people have more leisure time and goof around and try more things. And things like food trucks, being just a cheaper alternative way to, you don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a restaurant. You just need, $10,000 to buy an old truck. And
right. The food cart pods I have been enjoying so far. I don't know what your pod of choice is, but I'm looking.
I think the 10th and Alder pod is the best. There's a pod over here in No Man's Land that's not that great. But
that's the O'Brien Square pod, or
it's called Q19.
Wait,
this one that's right around the corner.
Wait, the 10th and Alder one, though, is that?
Oh, yeah, I forget what that's called. But that's where, where you get the places was the Kamungai place, the Thai. You get these stories of someone makes one dish,
right?
And it's so popular they have to open two, and then they have to open a brick and mortar restaurant just serving one dish. It's kind of awesome. And Salt and Straw is a great ice cream shop, and they started as a truck. Then they went to two trucks, and then they went to two. Now they have two brick and mortar stores that are just constantly packed with crazy ice cream, they call it farm to cone. That's
farm to cone. only here in Portland. It's a theme I've heard come up a lot, which is that Portland is still one of the cheapest cool cities you can live in. Cheapest on the West Coast, certainly. I'm surprised it's still cheap, though, given the enthusiasm people have for Portland. I don't know what's keeping it cheap, or why, or how long it will be, or not everybody here needs MetaFilter money to live in Portland.
No, it's weird. There's not a lot of jobs here. We've always had terrible unemployment in Oregon. It's always been several % over the national average.
But it's high unemployment, but does it mean people are still doing stuff, it seems like, and often still earning money? And you know what I mean? This gets into Portlandia territory, I realize. But
everything is a borderline Portlandia joke. That's what I realized when I was at this conference in Portland a couple weeks ago. A lot of the announcements had to be the end of the announcement was, I swear I'm not joking. You are supposed to like write a poem on a piece of paper, fold it into an origami bird, and put it on that fence, and then read someone else's poem later. We're dead serious about this. Like
right. Miranda Julification has begun.
Yeah, we're all kind of precious sometimes. But no, I mean, it's hard to get a job. There's, real estate has gone up, but it's not that bad. Everyone wants to move here, but not many do because it's hard to get a job. Or you have to be wealthy enough to start your own thing, or ready to starve enough.
Right. I guess there's this. Do you ever get the sense, you need to get out of the self-contained world of Portland occasionally? I mean, is it a little much sometimes, or a little bit like we're here in a pleasure dome? I need to not be in the dome for a bit so I can appreciate the dome. You know.
Well, I mean, I live outside of it, so I get to sample it constantly. And I think, I literally saw something, last Christmas that I was like, oh my God. And then there was a picture of it on the internet, and the entire internet said, oh my God. And that was there's a kid in Southeast Portland who rides a unicycle and plays a bagpipe.
Oh, yes.
And then he was doing it in a kilt with a Darth Vader helmet. So there was it was just crazy in 4 ways right there. And I saw it and a friend of mine said, oh, that's like Kevin or whatever his name is. Like, that's the kid. Kevin. That's the unicycle bagpipe kid. And then amping it up with a Utilikilt and a Darth Vader helmet at Christmas time was kind of crazy. I think there was also a Santa suit involved. When I saw a picture on the internet, I was like, oh, God, here it comes.
I would imagine the Utilikilt still has a following in Portland.
Yeah, and the 5-finger sandal.
Sure. But you see a few of those.
Becoming the official footwear, which is... yeah, so I remember seeing that in Portland going, oh, God. And the basically caption on a photo like that was like, oh, my God, Portland. Right. It's everything all at once, that you think about.
When you need to get off the net and go into Portland, but then need to go away from Portland, what option is left you at that point?
I don't. I guess I go to New York City if I want a harsh reality.
Yes.
But no, I mean, for me, it's just going out into the woods and sweating on a bike away from it all. It's pretty much, it grounds me a lot.
What direction do you head off in when you do that?
West-ish, south-ish.
I'm going to rent a bike myself after this, so I need to know where to go.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, in the city, you can just go anywhere you want. And there's nice signage now. And
not every city can say that.
Yeah, not very many at all can say that. Look for the sharrows, look for the green bike lanes. You'll be good.
I've been speaking here in, I guess, Slabtown-ish area with Matt Haughey, founder of MetaFilter. He also does a bunch of internet projects, including Fuely. If you drive a lot, check out Fuely. And we're recording here in his office above a fitness center, which is pretty neat, I think. Matt, thanks for taking the time today.
Oh, thanks. It was good to be here.
This has been Notebook on Cities and Culture. I've been Colin Marshall. You can keep up with all the cultural creators, internationalists, and observers of the urban scene on the show at colinmarshall.org. Thanks. And special thanks to everyone who backed this season on Kickstarter: Danny Bolson, Brad and Laramie on Movies, Paul Doyle, Umberto Grant, Matt Haughey, Andrew Hovanek, Mark Hines, Mary Gillander, Eric Graham, Will Graham, John French, Andrew Philippon Jr., Kimberly Hahn, Chris Kay, Andy Cooney, Mark Larson, Rebecca O'Malley, Michael O'Regan, Gail Poole, Blake Riley, Superfan Giovanni, Aidan Nullman, Adam Schaefer, Rob Schultz, Scott Schenker, Cam Smith, Kevin Smokler, Adam Sutherland, TSD, Thomas Unterberger, Matt Warren, and Wayne Wright.